Good morning. Today is November 3rd. The time is 10 a.m. I call to order the meeting of the Public Records Commission. Chair does detect a quorum. And would like to congratulate Franklin resident Ben Zobrist on being named the World Series MVP last night. Congratulations to the fan Eddie Weeks for waiting 108 years for this. So I was thinking about how to try and get this meeting in 108 seconds, but I don't think I can do that just to commemorate. But we'll begin by approving the minutes from the June 22nd, 2016 meeting. Properly moved. Properly seconding. Discussion. Hearing no one, I'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Minutes are approved. Next, we have our consent agenda. Mr. Callahan.
Good morning. We have 153 RDAs on the consent agenda. They were all either approved upon review or the agency agreed to suggested changes by the Comptroller's Office, Secretary of State's Office, and the other reviewers. So they all made the consent agenda.
Just so we could clarify for everybody sitting in the room or watching around the world right now. Mm-hmm. So if there's any objection to it being placed on the consent agenda, any staff member in that group has the ability to prevent it from being on the consent agenda, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, any discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of all items found on the consent agenda. Properly moved. Properly seconding. Discussion. Hearing no one, I'll take a vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Consent agenda is approved. Item number 3 is RDAs for discussion, which we should have none because none got voted.
We have none.
So we'll move on to item number 4, records management update.
Okay. We continue to meet weekly with Library and Archives, Audit, and General Services to review the RDAs submitted. And with the RDAs approved today, the PRC has taken action on 399 RDAs this year. And overall, there are only 26% of RDAs remaining to be revised or retired from the total we started in 2013. So we have done 1,318 out of 1,785. The records holding report, the agency has completed the report between July and August, everyone turning in their reports by the set deadline. Overall, the total volume remains steady with only a slight increase. It was less than 1%, about 1,630 cubic feet. And the volumes in agencies for all state agencies is 455,662. And so in a way, this represents that we now have agencies are following the RDAs. They are destroying on time. And the reason why we had a slight fluctuation in that, there was some of the increases that we've had on the RDAs approved over the last few years resulted in some items having to wait an extra year or two and are now destroyed. So it shows an improvement in the overall function of the agencies and how their records officers are staying on top of everything. And one thing I do also want to point out is that as we're talking about RDAs and records holding reports, with today, they had their last RDA approved. The Comptroller's Office has finished their review of all of their RDAs and schedules. So I want to thank Shelley Eisman from the Comptroller's Office as the records officer for taking the time on that. Trainings and meetings, we have continued to do so. We did 19 training sessions so far this year, and we had 319 attendees. And our records management staff members have conducted 329 agency visits. So overall, as of September 30th, for destruction, agencies have destroyed 20,955 cubic feet with an additional 6,707 destroyed at Richards & Richards at the State Record Center. And so this is an increase over the last 3 years, the averages, and once again reflects on the work of the agency records officers in cooperating with Records Management Division and keeping up, and also reporting on their certificates of destruction, which is important as it provides that basis to cover for in case there are any public records requests or litigation, that they have a clear trail of how they're doing their destruction process. And the last thing I'd like to do is introduce Benjamin Duncan. He is our new analyst, and so We have gone from 7 to 8 members of the division staff. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you for that report. I'm curious, with the state's interest certainly across agencies, departments to move to more paper records to digital files. I know you're involved in that process as well. Do you have an assessment of what percentage of the total files are transforming, and is there a trend, and or could we get a perspective on what that looks like?
There is a trend. We are discussing more with every agency, and part of the process of the last few years has been updating the RDAs to reflect paper or electronic. A lot of the switch has actually been to born digital and to allow the records that are in existence to die on the vine, because unless you're going into it in a regular basis, the cost of digitizing will end up being more expensive. So we've seen that increase in the records stored at Richards & Richards State Record Center, but yet the decline of records holding reports. So if you think back a few years ago, we were at over 600,000 cubic feet, and now we're at 455 or so. So we're seeing that decline with it. I'm not sure if I can put a number on the exact amount or percentage, but if you go back when I started in the industry about 15, 20 years ago, you were looking at a 85% of the volume of records in any organization was probably going to be paper, and now you're seeing that flip to where it's shooting down to below 30% towards that. What will probably end up at around 15. So you have a steady increase, and we're definitely talking with more agencies about it, and that's why we also added the item on the state contract with Richards & Richards, so that they can, with this, when we bid it out, so that if an agency says we need to do this and there are records that are being stored there, they can quickly digitize and then destroy the paper records.
So I guess if you looked at the records holding report of 2016 and the previous year, we could start to compare and see the trends of individual departments, yes. Paper storage, cubic feet being reduced. That would be the way to look at that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Following up on the Commissioner's comments, most of the agencies' paper storage is going down or fluctuating just slightly, with one notable exception that one's gone up over 460% storage of paper records. 4.5 times their paper storage has increased in 1 year.
That was the State Museum, or
Department of Health.
There are, well, one of the things that we have been doing is, as we've gone out and we've been doing some assessments of agencies and measuring that specifically. Finance and administration, I think, is what that one was. So as we're doing a better job of measuring, is it the museum? Okay. And so as we go out and measure some of those, that's where we're seeing some of the ones were off. There's also some agencies that ran into, they had some litigation or public records requests that their numbers dropped slightly. Most agencies had a decrease. As a matter of fact, we would have shown an overall decrease. Department of Transportation, which has done an excellent job of reduction over the last few years, they had a spike, and some of that was due to litigation and also following up on some things, and they also had some destruction that had to be put off a couple of years because of the increase in some of their RDAs.
Do we think this is a one-time fluke, a 400% increase, or Can we
Yeah.
expect them to do a 400% increase again?
No, I think it's some of it is going back, and when you go through with an agency, especially some of the smaller agencies, and increase the education of the records officers, and as we're doing that training, we do over 10 unique classes each year on specific items. But then as we come in, the records holding report is done by the agencies themselves, and sometimes records coordinators or such fall short on that assessment when they do their division. When we do an assessment, our team goes out and we go to every office, and not to make this sound weird, but we go and we look at every drawer, every desk, every file cabinet, and measure, and then we also mark it by RDA. But that's something you don't do every year. You do that every 3 to 5 years. So some of the agencies that they're doing a better job, but when we went out, we found that, yes, there was some lower amounts as opposed to what they've been reporting last year. So this is part of the education aspect of it.
Anything else, Mr. Weeks? So if I can follow up on what Mr. Weeks was asking about, I look at our Secretary of State number, which is up 163%. Is that because of things that have been transferred to State Library and Archives, or
No, well,
we have done
there-
something in our department?
There was litigation hold that there was 2 years worth of records that were not, and they weren't transferred to Richards and Richards because they needed to be kept on site. As a matter of fact, you had to pull stuff out of Richards and Richards and put it in there, put it back in agency so it could be retrieved.
I remember now.
So, and it was a pretty big case. So sometimes that happens, and you can't you don't want to transfer over to the State Records Center, which is sort of normally how things fall off. So in that case, that was several hundred feet just from that one division. And then we also did a thorough assessment of Secretary of State's office and to get the numbers on there. So it does come up sometimes, which in a way I'd rather us find information that's being kept longer according to either a public records request or a litigation hold than us not come across that because records are still being destroyed or such.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if it's the place of this commission to address this or not, so please speak your mind on that. Be helpful in light of this conversation maybe to have some insights as to a 5-year plan or some vision forward for these departments, what their intentions are. Do they have a plan to convert? And we understand it's not predictable per se. There are things that happen, but at least to get us an idea if they are expecting to, turn from paper to digital in a 5-year time or 2-year time or 20-year time, or what do they expect their volume will be long term? And just can we be an advocate for that transformation process, or should we be an advocate for that?
I do want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the preliminary discussions that have been occurring and try to talk about that statewide.
Yeah, statewide, we're so one of the things that we do, as we mentioned, we have agency meetings. So monthly, our team of analysts will checks with every one of their agencies to follow up. Is there anything that you need? Part of our strategy for RDAs is that we talk with every agency of saying, has anything changed? Are you looking at changing? You have this as it is paper, and are you planning on changing it to electronic? So do we need to make that adjustment? So we have those conversations with every agency. Sometimes we find out rather suddenly. An agency will call me up and say, Kevin, we think we want to convert this over in the, sometime in the next 6 months. What vendor should we use? And then, of course, it's, you have to go through the bid process, and there's options. If it's a small volume, we do have some services on the contract with the State Record Center, but, let's look at this. What's your overall goal? And since, for the last 13, 15 years, one of the main things I worked with was digital conversions. Professionally, it has been, all right, here are the steps that you need to take. Where does this fall? And so we go through that whole point of what's your return on investment with them, taking into account the amount of real estate they're using and the price per square foot that they're being charged on their office space for record storage, as well as what their storage at the State Record Center would cost. So we're trying to do that, and that's part of, as we do more and more of the RDAs, helping agencies go to very often that paper electronic disposition where they're in that transition mode. So I don't always have a clear 5-year plan or understanding of it, but it's something we can start talking with agencies more to see if they can plan that out.
Yeah, I'm starting to envision if there was possibly a template or something you could provide us maybe once a year, just a summary as to the status of this, and it just kind of lets us see the ebb and flow, because I think some of them are probably reactionary to this and other ones are more proactive, and it'd be good we could provide some leadership in that and just a thoughtful reminder that we expect to have an update once a year, and that would cause them to, maybe we should be a little more proactive and have a plan about how we're going to go about doing this instead of just reacting. Yeah.
That's a good suggestion. I don't see harm.
No, that's something I can do, and we can work on gathering that information. Yeah, we have aspects of it, so to put something together and maybe present that either in our end of winter, spring, or even the June, July meeting, kind of near the end of the fiscal year. So I'll start putting that together.
Further discussion? All right. Thank you for the report. We have any members of the public that wish to address the commission? Nobody? Okay. Any old business? All right, hearing now, entertain a motion to adjourn. Probably moved. Probably seconded. Item is non-debatable. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. We stand adjourned.